Hello everyone, and welcome to the 7th and last session of our 7-part BizFlow enablement series. To recap, in our last session, session 6, we took our performance evaluation AppDev form and we added data and UI logic to it to give it a much more guided user experience for our end users. In this session, session 7, we'll be walking through the process of committing the AppDev form data to an external database table. And as a quick background, AppDev automatically stores its form data into a separate AppDev data repository as an encrypted JSON or XML file, allowing users to define whatever backend they prefer. So the purpose of this session, committing the form data into an external database table, is to make the data available for integrations, RPA, reporting, etc. However, there are two major underlying assumptions with this process. The first is that the external database table should already exist prior to this data push. And the second is that the user performing this process has access to both the table from assumption number 1 and to the specific BizFlow environment's AppDev admin page. We also have an article on our support page dedicated to this process, which will be linked down below in our description box. With that, let's jump right into it. The very first step before doing this, as mentioned above in our assumptions, is to make sure that we have our external database table set up and that we have access to both it and the AppDev admin page. With that squared away, the next thing we need to do is set up our Tomcat web application files and folder structure. The article goes into more detail about the specifics of the structure, but the main point is that we have our app.in folder, under which we have our DB folder. And the DB folder contains two XML files. First, we have our configuration file, which is where we configure the details of the database, as well as define the file where the query is stored, which is the second SQL mapper file. And this defines the actual query, as well as the ID of the query, which we'll need later on. So once we have the files and the folder structure set up, we're going to zip the entire thing, give it a name that's applicable to our project. And so now that we have our Tomcat web application zip file, we're going to go to our AppDev admin module and upload it. So here we're logged into the AppDev admin page, and we're first going to select the application management menu to upload our zip file. From here, we're going to click the Upload and Deploy New Application button, which opens the Upload Application modal. For the application name, we're going to name it the same thing we named our zip file, which is Performance Eval Demo, and this is for consistency's sake. And we're also going to give it a description. What does this application do? And in our case, this application will commit our performance evaluation form data to the Performance Eval Demo database table. Next, we're going to click Choose File, and we're going to select the zip file from step 1. Lastly, we're going to hit Update. And we can scroll down to find our application has been uploaded. So now that the application has been loaded, we should be able to go back to the administration page, open the Query Management menu, and find our performance evaluation, configuration, and SQL mapper XML files. We're actually going to need the information from the SQL mapper file for the next step, so we're going to keep this tab open. Next, we need to create a new API for the application, and the API is what will be called by the form to actually trigger the query. So to create our API, we're going to navigate back over to the admin page, and we're going to open the API Integration Management menu. From here, we're going to select our project from the list on the left, and click the plus icon. So we're first going to name our API, which is this type field here. And for consistency's sake, I'm going to name it the same thing we did our application. A description of what our API will be doing. For this field, URL/query/method, this is where we'll need to go back over to our query management menu, specifically our SQL mapper file, and it's going to be the name of the application dot namespace dash ID. So in our case, it's going to be performance eval demo dot app dash insert performance eval demo. So we're simply going to go back over to our API integration management menu and paste that into the field. Method is going to be query. We're not using this to populate a lookup table, so we're going to leave this use as lookup data unchecked. And then the last thing is we're going to scroll down to the request content section. And here we're simply going to add some keywords for our specific API. And additional details regarding this, and of course regarding the entire process, can be found in the support page below. First, I'm going to toggle our selection here from tree to code to make it easier to edit. And then I'm going to paste our keywords. And the last thing I'm going to do here is save. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that we have a new row in our APIs list on the left under our project. So now that we have our API, the last thing we need to do is to register it to our form. We can do this under the AppDev form management menu. First, we need to find our form on the left. Then we can set the integration with the API either to a specific published version of the selected form or to all versions of it. We're going to set it at the overall form level. Then in the resulting window, we're going to select the API created in the above step. And we're going to run the API or trigger the API only when the form is completed rather than every time the form is saved. To set the integration, we just have to hit apply, and we can tell that the integration was performed correctly by the performance eval demo API appearance here and the fact that we now have the delete integration button. Now, as a reminder, the purpose of this web application and API was to commit the form data to an external database table upon form completion. So to test this, we're going to go into our portal, initiate and submit a performance evaluation form. So here we've logged onto the portal, and I'm going to open up a performance evaluation process I just initiated after finishing the API integration. And to make sure that we have a good test, let's go ahead and populate as many fields as we can. Now, before submitting and completing our form, let's open the Information tab on the right and grab the process ID. And this is the unique identifier for this specific instance of the performance evaluation process. So now that we have that, we're going to close that window and let's go ahead and submit our form. And that should have triggered our new performance eval demo API. So to test that it properly committed the data, let's open our database query tool. And here we're going to run a select query against our external database table, specifically for the process ID we copied from our portal. And here we get one row as expected in our results, since we're searching against one process ID. And the table columns correspond to the actual entities in our form, so we have our employee name, employee email address, position title, and so on. And all of the fields, all of the columns are populated as we would expect to see. And that concludes our last enablement session. To recap the entire series, we walked through how to create a data model and form in AppDev, how to apply UI and data logic to that form, how to create a process definition and workflow in BPS, how to connect the two together, and finally, in our last session, how to commit the form data to an external database for integrations and reporting. As always, thank you so much for joining us for this entire enablement series, and we look forward to seeing you all in a future one.